I was ready to end it all, until I heard his voice. My name is Lucia Martin. I'm 32 years old, born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I used to believe in miracles. I was the girl who always had a plan. The one who color-coded her planner, prayed before every decision, and believed that if you did everything right, life would reward you. I grew up in a small Baptist church on the east side of town, where testimonies were loud and faith was louder. I sang in the choir, led youth Bible study, and believed in healing, purpose, and divine timing. But none of that mattered the night I stood on the edge of the Roebling Bridge, staring down at the dark waters of the Ohio River. The wind was sharp, slicing through my coat like it knew I didn't belong here anymore. Cars rushed past behind me, their headlights streaking like ghosts. No one slowed down. No one noticed. And maybe that was the point. I had become invisible to the world, to my friends, to God. I remember gripping the cold railing, my fingers trembling, not from fear but from exhaustion. I wasn't afraid to die. I was just tired of trying to live. Everything in me had unraveled. My body was sick. My bank account was empty. My heart was shattered. And my faith, the thing I once clung to like a lifeline, had gone silent. I whispered into the night, "God, if you're still there, say something." But the sky said nothing. And so I leaned forward, ready to let go. That's where my story begins, not in the pews of a church or the pages of a devotional, but on a bridge in the dark with nothing left but silence. My name is Lucia, and this is the story of how I died and how Jesus brought me back to life. I didn't jump. I don't remember walking home. I just remember the silence, not the peaceful kind, the kind that screams, the kind that makes you question if you're even real. I sat on the edge of my bed, soaked through, staring at the wall like it might blink first. My phone buzzed once. A missed call from my mom. I didn't answer. I hadn't answered in weeks. I peeled off my wet clothes, crawled under the covers, and waited for sleep to take me. It didn't. Instead, memories came like ghosts. The day I got laid off, the doctor's voice saying autoimmune. The moment I saw the texts on his phone, the betrayal, the unraveling, I whispered again, "God," nothing. Just the hollow echo of my own voice bouncing off empty walls. It started with the job. I was a marketing manager at a mid-sized firm downtown. I loved it, the pace, the creativity, the team. Then came the restructuring. I was let go, along with half the department. They said it wasn't personal. It felt personal. The office where I'd spent 5 years building campaigns suddenly felt foreign. My desk was cleared by noon. Security walked me out like I was a criminal. I thought I'd bounce back. I had savings. I had a resume. I had faith. I updated my LinkedIn profile, sent out applications, went to interviews. But weeks turned into months. Rejection emails piled up. My confidence crumbled. I started believing what the silence seemed to say, that I wasn't good enough anymore, that I never really was. Then came the fatigue. At first, I blamed it on stress. Job hunting is exhausting, I told myself. But then came the weight loss, the joint pain, the rashes. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The doctor ran tests, more tests, blood work, biopsies, and then the diagnosis, lupus. My body was attacking itself. I couldn't work. I couldn't even walk some days. The inflammation made every movement agony. My insurance lapsed 2 months after I lost my job. My savings drained faster than I could comprehend. Doctor visits, medications, bills. I sold my car. I borrowed money from family. I stopped answering when they called to check on me. The shame was too heavy. I was supposed to be the strong one, the successful one. Now I was just broken. And then the final blow, James, my fiancé, my best friend. We'd been together for 4 years. He proposed on my 30th birthday right after church with both our families watching. I thought we were building a future. I thought he was my person. But I found out he'd been seeing someone else for months while I was sick, while I was praying for healing. I saw the messages on his phone one morning. He'd left it on the counter while he showered. I wasn't snooping. It was just there, screen lit up. Her name, her words, his replies. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped it. When he came out, towel around his waist, humming, I just held up the phone. His face went pale. He didn't apologize. He just packed a bag and left. I stopped going to church. I couldn't sit through worship while my life was falling apart. I couldn't smile and shake hands and pretend everything was fine. I stopped praying. The words felt empty, pointless. I stopped believing. What was the point? I'd done everything right. I'd served. I'd tithed. I'd believed. And where did it get me? Sick, broke, alone. I became a ghost in my own life. I'd wake up at noon, stare at the ceiling, scroll through social media, and feel like the world was moving without me. Everyone else was getting promotions, getting engaged, having bobbies, and I was just disappearing. I didn't shower for days. I didn't eat. I didn't care. Food tasted like cardboard. Life felt the same. I tried therapy once. My sister set up the appointment, drove me there, waited in the lobby. The therapist was nice. She asked gentle questions. I smiled through the session, said all the right things, and never went back. I couldn't explain the darkness to someone sitting in a bright office with motivational posters on the wall. I told everyone I was fine. My mom would call. "How are you, baby?" "I'm fine, Mama." My best friend texted. "Miss you, coffee soon." "Yeah, soon," but I wasn't fine. And there would be no coffee. I started drinking just enough to numb the edges, wine at night. Vodka when the pain got worse. I deleted numbers from my phone. I blocked people who cared. I didn't want help. I wanted escape. Then came the bridge. I didn't plan it. One evening in late October, I just started walking. Rain falling, heart heavy, no destination. My feet carried me downtown, past the closed shops, past the empty parks, until I found myself on the Roebling Bridge. I stood there, staring at the water below. The Ohio River looked black in the darkness, endless. I thought about how easy it would be, just climb over, just let go. No more pain, no more bills, no more wondering why God abandoned me. I gripped the railing. The metal was cold and wet. My heart pounded, but not from fear, from relief. Finally an end. Finally peace. I closed my eyes, ready to disappear. And then the voice. "I'm still here." It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was steady, gentle, like a whisper wrapped in warmth. I froze. I looked around. No one. Just the wind and the river and the ache in my chest. But I knew. I knew it wasn't me. It wasn't madness. It was him, Jesus. The one I'd stopped talking to. The one I thought had left me. He was there on that bridge in that moment. I collapsed to my knees right there on the wet pavement. I sobbed, not from fear, but from release. For the first time in months, I felt something other than pain. I felt seen. I felt loved. I didn't jump. I walked home. My legs shook the whole way, but I walked. That night, I opened the Bible. It sat on my nightstand, covered in dust. I hadn't touched it in 6 months. The pages were stiff. I didn't know where to start, so I just flipped. Psalm 34:18. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." I read it again, and again, and again. My vision blurred with tears. How did I end up on this exact verse? Out of hundreds of pages, thousands of verses, I landed here. It felt like God circling my name. Like he was saying, "I see you, Lucia, I haven't forgotten." I cried, I prayed, not fancy words, just raw ones. "God, I don't know if you still want me, but I want you." I didn't hear a voice this time, but I felt peace, a flicker, a breath. Next morning, I showered, I made coffee, I opened the blinds. Sunlight poured into my apartment for the first time in weeks. It hurt my eyes, but I didn't close them. I stood there, letting the warmth touch my face. It wasn't a miracle. My lupus didn't disappear, my bank account didn't refill. James didn't come back, but something shifted. It was movement, small, fragile, but real. I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I barely recognized the woman staring back. Hollow cheeks. Dark circles, but her eyes, they weren't empty anymore. There was a spark, faint, but there. And for the first time in a long time, I believed maybe Jesus hadn't given up on me. Maybe he was just waiting for me to stop running. Took me 3 Sundays to walk through the doors. I'd passed the little brick church on the corner of Vine Street a dozen times. It wasn't flashy. No LED screens, no polished worship team. Just a wooden sign that read, "Grace Chapel, come as you are." I wasn't sure I qualified, but something tugged at me. Not guilt, not obligation, just curiosity, maybe hope. I sat in the back near the exit, ready to run if it got too heavy. The worship was simple, a piano, a few voices, nothing fancy. But the words hit different. "You restore what's broken," I cried, quietly. No one stared. A woman beside me handed me a tissue and smiled. No questions, just kindness. That morning, I didn't find religion. I found refuge. After service, I tried to slip out unnoticed, but an older man caught my eye. He looked like someone's grandpa, warm eyes, gentle smile, silver hair. "You're Lucia, right?" he asked. I froze. "Yes," he nodded slowly. "I felt led to pray for you this week. Didn't know why, just knew your name." My breath caught. I hadn't told anyone I was coming. I hadn't posted. I hadn't spoken my name aloud in days. How could he know? He placed a hand on my shoulder. "God hasn't forgotten you." I broke. Right there in the foyer. Tears, shaking, relief. He prayed, not loud, not dramatic, just real. And for the first time, I believed maybe God was chasing me even when I was running. Maybe he'd been there all along, waiting patiently. I started writing again. Not for work, not for anyone else, just for me. I bought a cheap journal from Walgreens, blue cover, lined pages, and scribbled every thought, every prayer, every question. Some pages were angry. Why did you let this happen? Some were desperate. Please, I can't do this anymore. Some were empty, no words, just tear stains. But I kept writing. One night I wrote, I don't know how to trust again. The next morning, I opened my Bible randomly and landed on Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. I stared at the words. They weren't new. I'd memorized them as a kid in Sunday school, but now they felt alive, personal, like God was speaking directly to me. I wrote them in bold across the page. That verse became my anchor. It happened at the food pantry. I'd signed up to volunteer, mostly to stay busy, partly to feel useful. Grace Chapel ran a weekly distribution for families in need. I was sorting canned goods when a little boy ran past me, giggling, chasing a balloon. He tripped and the balloon popped with a loud bang. He looked up at me with wide eyes, bottom lip trembling, waiting for me to scold him. Instead, I laughed. Not a polite chuckle. A real, belly-deep laugh that surprised even me. It startled me. I hadn't laughed in months, not since the diagnosis, not since James, not since the bridge. I looked around, no one noticed. But I did. Something was healing, not just my body, my soul. And in that moment I whispered, "Thank you, Jesus." Not because everything was fixed, but because I was finally starting to live again. I found it while cleaning out my nightstand, the suicide note, folded neatly. Written in blue ink, my handwriting, but not my heart anymore. I stared at it for a long time. It felt like a relic from another life, from another version of me who couldn't see past the pain. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just read it. Every word soaked in despair, every sentence a goodbye. "I'm sorry, I tried, I can't anymore." Then I did something I hadn't planned. I burned it. I lit a match, dropped the paper into the sink, and watched it curl and blacken. Smoke rose, ashes scattered. It wasn't dramatic. It was sacred, like burying a ghost, like declaring to the universe that I was choosing life. That letter didn't define me anymore. Jesus did. I saw him at Kroger. I was reaching for a box of chamomile tea when I heard his voice, casual, laughing like nothing had ever happened. "James," he turned, our eyes met. He froze. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I just nodded. "Hi." He stammered something, an awkward half apology, half excuse. I didn't listen. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was free. I grabbed my tea and walked away. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and whispered, "Thank you, Jesus." Not because I'd won some confrontation, not because I'd made him feel bad, but because I didn't need closure anymore. I didn't need him to validate my pain or explain his betrayal. I had peace, real peace, the kind that doesn't come from circumstances, the kind that only comes from God. The flare-ups became less frequent. I started walking again, just around the block at first. 10 minutes, then 15, then to the park, then to the church. My body still hurt some days. The lupus wasn't gone, but I was managing, learning to listen to my body, to rest when needed, to celebrate small victories. My doctor was surprised at my next appointment. "Your inflammation markers are down," he said, studying the charts. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." I smiled. "I'm praying." He didn't say much, but I saw it in his eyes, curiosity, maybe even respect. I wasn't healed overnight, but I was healing, and every step felt like a victory. Every morning I woke up felt like a gift. I started keeping a gratitude list. Small things, sunlight, coffee, birdsong, life. Pastor Linda asked me to share my story at the women's group. "I think your testimony could help someone," she said after Wednesday service. I hesitated. I wasn't ready. Or maybe I was. My hands trembled as I stood in front of 12 women in the church basement. Voice shaking, I told them everything: the job loss, the sickness, the betrayal, the bridge, the voice that saved me. There were tears, nods, silence. Afterward, a young woman with red-rimmed eyes hugged me tight. "I thought I was the only one," she whispered. "I've been standing on my own bridge." My heart broke and mended at the same time. That's when I knew my pain had a purpose. Jesus didn't just save me. He was sending me. My story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to everyone who needed hope. Happened during worship one Sunday morning. I was singing, eyes closed, heart open, when I heard it again, the voice. Not loud, not external, just clear, unmistakable. "I'm still here." Same words, same warmth, the words that stopped me on the bridge. But this time I wasn't on a bridge, I was in a sanctuary, surrounded by people who loved me. I smiled through tears, because now I knew he never left. Even in my darkest moment when I thought God had abandoned me, he was there, whispering. Waiting, loving. The silence I thought was absence was actually presence. He was giving me space to choose him again. And I did. I chose life. I chose faith. I chose Jesus. And he chose me first. He always had. Pastor Linda pulled me aside after service. "There's a women's conference next month," she said. "Downtown Convention Center, about 500 women. I think you should share your story." My stomach dropped. A room full of strangers, my scars on display. But then I remembered the girl who hugged me after women's group. The one who said, "I thought I was the only one." How many more women were standing on bridges? How many needed to hear that Jesus still speaks? I nodded. Okay. I didn't feel ready, but I felt willing. And sometimes that's all God needs. Not perfection, not confidence, just a willing heart. He can work with that. He'd already proven it with me. I was living proof that broken doesn't mean useless. The auditorium was packed, women from all over the city. Laughter, worship, energy. I sat backstage, palms sweating, praying under my breath. "God, give me the words, let them hear you, not me." And then it was my turn. I stepped onto the stage, heart pounding. The lights were bright. I gripped the mic and looked out at the sea of faces. I was ready to end it all, I began, until I heard his voice. Silence. I told them everything. The job loss, the sickness, the betrayal, the bridge. And the whisper, "I'm still here." By the end, there were tears, hugs, healing, women lined up afterward. Me too. Thank you. I needed this. But more than anything, there was hope. Hope that maybe they weren't alone, that maybe Jesus was still speaking. After the conference, I sat alone in my car in the parking garage, replaying the day. I didn't feel proud. I felt humbled. Because I realized something, my story wasn't about survival. It was about surrender. Jesus didn't just rescue me. He rebuilt me, piece by piece, prayer by prayer, whisper by whisper. And the message that changed me wasn't complicated. It was simple. I'm still here. 3 words, but they held the weight of eternity. They held the promise that no matter how far we run, how dark it gets, how broken we become, Jesus is still there, still speaking, still loving, still calling us home. Emails started coming in after that. Messages, calls, women who had stood on their own bridges, men who had lost their way, teens who felt invisible. They said my story gave them permission to feel, to hope, to believe again. I started a blog. Still here, just stories, just truth, my story, other people's stories. All of us learning to listen for the voice that saves. It grew, not because I was special, but because pain is universal and so is grace. Jesus was using my brokenness to build bridges. If you're reading this, if you've ever felt forgotten, invisible, done, I want you to know something. You're not alone. I've been there, on the edge, in the silence, in the dark. But Jesus met me there, not with thunder. Not with lightning, with a whisper. I'm still here. And he's still here for you. So don't give up. Open the Bible. Say the prayer, walk into the church, reach out, because the miracle isn't always the healing. Sometimes it's the voice that says, you still matter. And you do, you always have, Jesus is still here, and so are you.